So I think as we look at these homes of Galilee, we'll see two different kinds. There's kind of this. We'll start with the sort of larger family home where maybe a couple generations might actually live in the same home. And then we'll also look at some smaller homes that we see, for example, typically in Nazareth, that are built up along hillsides and make use of caves and things. But let's begin now with a typical Galilean home. And in this particular slide, you see that it's fairly typical that it would have high walls with only really one main door out to the main street there. If you notice sort of the lower part of the picture here toward the front, there's a doorway that goes kind of into an open area, an uncovered courtyard. And outside there'd be, mainly stone walls and covered with stucco, and sometimes painted bright colors. And we see that as you would go into this sort of open courtyard area, on either side there are rooms, and towards the back. Now, why would they, do this? Well, first of all, they don't have a lot of rain, especially at certain times of the year. But also, it would seem from the studies that you have shorter beams required, therefore, for the wood when and the wood was pretty scarce, and they didn't have some of the reinforcement and stuff that we have today. So it permitted them to build shorter ceilings or roofs. And we'll see later that rooftop living was an important part of their experience of living in these homes. So again, as you look at this area, you see there's an area there as you go through the center, right towards the left there's an area for the animals, and people live pretty close to their animals, which were very valuable to them if they had them at all. And usually a beast of burden or some goats and other things like that. Behind there is the kitchen area in this particular drawing. And then in the back center there, the far back wall, you'll see kind of a dining area, and you notice that the table is close to the floor. They didn't eat at tables like we do today. And coming further around, you have some sleeping areas, and then perhaps more of we kind of call it like a living room. And you may notice then the steps going up to a second level. And we're going to kind of talk about that second level in a moment. But you'll see again a kind of a central open courtyard that has a series of rooms around it. Is kind of at the first level of some of the more, I wouldn't call them wealthy, but maybe merchant class and other people who could afford homes of this size, and would often have several generations living there. So let's go to the next slide now. And on this particular slide, we see the kind of rooftop. They use their rooftops a great deal, especially in the dry time of year, which really in that climate is from about, late April, all the way through October. There's very, very little rain, if any at all. And so they can do a lot of rooftop living. And that second floor is open to the sky, but it might have some little minor shelters on the top. But basically, it was just open to the sky. And it's a dry climate. It's cool at night. Often they would sleep up there rather than down in the house at that time of the year. And they'd have meetings and gatherings. We have images of people going up there to pray and to kind of get alone. And so all of these are ways of saying that rooftops were very well used and important at that time. So let's go on now to the next slide. Although indoor plumbing was largely unknown, except in extremely wealthy places, it was very common for them to have some sort of a mikvah. This one shows a double thing, which might be in a wealthier home, but ritual bathing was very, very common, and they would of course have to haul the water and so on. But this isn't just for cleanliness, but there was also in the Jewish traditions many ritual baths and things that were very important to them. So in most larger size homes, there would be, even in smaller ones, there'd be some sort of a place where one could bathe, both for cleanliness but also for religious ritual called a mikvah. Our notion that people hardly ever bathed in the old days is, I think, kind of a tired old notion. They bathe more than we typically think, maybe not as often as we do. Now here's the next slide. You'll see a picture of one. So this was a mikvah that was found carved into an area, the back part of a home, in a cave area in Nazareth, a mikvah. And again, they climb. You can sort of see steps there on the left side of it, and they go down into it and can bathe almost standing up. That's a deep one there, but you get the idea. That would be a typical feature of most homes. In this next slide, we see that a lot of the cooking, although there was a kitchen sort of in that one picture we saw a while back, There was a kitchen indoors, but most of the real cooking is done outdoors for lots of reasons, obviously, to avoid fire and so on. But cooking outdoors, and you see the animals are right nearby. But an outdoor oven was a pretty typical feature, whether in that courtyard area where we saw, or if they have a back area, this would be where the cooking would often be done. Now we're going to go and take a look at the excavations of Peter's home in Capernaum and see how the setup here that we've been looking at is pretty typical in Simon Peter's home. So here is Peter and his home. Now, as I said, this is obviously built up from the ruins in the sense it's a model, but you see an open courtyard area in the middle, and there's an entryway from the street that you can kind of see there in the upper right, the diagonal there, that you enter in and come into that open area, and that there are other enclosed rooms, a little bit, not identical, but a little bit like that house we looked at on the first slide. And we're going to now kind of go into that house and see some of the rooms. So this would be then the open courtyard you walk into off the street, and there's no roof above, as you can see in this section. And there's some areas here that you have some water and places to catch rainwater. You have you don't see it here, but there'd probably be an area for cooking and things like that. Notice again the basalt or the basalt, it's a dark stone that's common there around Capernaum. That would probably be covered over by a stucco. They haven't done that here, I think, because they want us to sort of see the bare bones in this photograph. And again, we were pretty sure where Peter's home was because there were churches built, and there was there's a lot of good archaeological data that this is Simon and Andrew's home, Simon Peter and Andrew's home there in Capernaum, that they probably shared with a couple of families or several generations. So here again, looking in still in that open courtyard area, you see some things there for cooking and probably some catching water and things like that. So that's right there, still in the open area of the home. And here again, just another look. Now you start to see the Sea of Galilee off in the distance. It's right on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. As fishermen, they're going to want to be right close to the shore. And this is almost across the street from the synagogue. Notice the steps going up to a rooftop area, very important in those older homes, or the ancient homes, I should say, you see there. Now in this photo, again, we're just taking one more look around and then open courtyard area, an area towards the back, and you see a fishing boat and some other things that are right up next to the coast. So I'm sure they had a back area. Now we'll go inside one of the areas with a covered roof. This area here is indoors. It does have a roof over the top, and you can see it's an area where there'd be kind of we call it a living room area. They could bring in a low table and also have meals in here. You see the cushions close to the floor. These indoor areas would certainly be used a lot more in the cooler weather when it was raining and so on. And simple but elegant. And here's just again looking around the room. And in this area, we see another home in Capernaum that's been excavated and kind of reimagined by this artist. And again, you'll see some very similar features. There's an area that you walk into from the street. I think it's not visible in this photograph, but you see a rooftop area and steps going up to it. You see open areas, and it's all kind of surrounded by a high wall around each side that faces out for security and also privacy. And you might again note that although the bare stones are shown there, it would most likely have been covered over by a kind of a stucco. Now let's go take a look at a different kind of a home here. We're going to go to Nazareth now. There's been a lot of excavating there. So here in Nazareth, this is a much smaller home. You can see that it's much smaller. It has a kind of an open area, but also an area that's cut away here. So that middle courtyard would have no ceiling, but above there's ceilings or coverings. And we're looking into the house. Sort of on the left there, you see an area for some sleeping. On the right, you see a kind of a kitchen area. The mikvah on the far back upper left corner. And that common room off to the left there with the exposed beams wouldn't be all that exposed, but there'd be some bedding and things like that for the cooler months. A lot of times, as I said, in the warmer months, they'd sleep above. And this is the ruins of that same home that we just looked at, that the artist has conceived and built up. So here it is again, the reconstruction of that home in Nazareth. And this is just a kitchen, kind of just a mock-up of a kitchen. Now, one thing I didn't do very well in the video was to include a photograph of a home that might extend into a cave-like area. This is likely the kind of home Mary lived in, where the Annunciation takes place, and the excavations are all there that show a kind of a house that opens up into the street area, but also extends back into the cave area up along a hillside. And Nazareth is very hilly, surrounded by mountains. It's like being in San Francisco, and it's very common that homes there in Nazareth and other hilly regions, which much of the Holy Land is, are built right up against the wall, if you will, of the hill, and built into it. And that provides a cool area for both storage and for sleep and so on. And then it extends out past that into a street area. And you'll see a lot of that also. So that should end this video. It's gone on too long already on homes in the ancient or the Holy Land. And I hope this has been a little bit helpful to you.